The wind that morning was colder than it should have been for early spring. Leona Harris stood by the cracked mirror above the sink in her tiny flat, smoothing down the collar of a blue coat that had seen better days. The fabric still held the faint scent of eucalyptus left over from her paramedic days. Now just a memory. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from the chill, but from what she was about to do. $900. That's all she had left, not in her bank, in the world. And yet, she was about to risk every single penny of it. Across the hallway, 13-year-old Aiden was asleep on the pull-out sofa. One arm curled protectively around his inhaler. His soft wheeze filled the silence, a gentle but constant reminder of the stakes: severe bronchitis, high sensitivity to mold and pollutants, expensive meds, no margin for error. Leona turned away from the mirror, slipped the envelope of cash into her coat pocket, and stepped out into the grey morning light of Willowmere. She didn't tell Aiden where she was going. Not yet. How could she? How do you explain to a child that your last hope is a condemned estate nobody wants? The courthouse in the town centre loomed like it didn't want her there. The auction hall was colder, still marble floors, polished but lifeless. Men in press suits murmured into phones, sipping coffee with the easy confidence of people used to owning things. Leona sat in the back row, knees together, elbows tucked in, trying not to draw attention. Her coat seemed too blue. Her shoes were too worn. Her presence is too out of place. She scanned the listing sheet again. Lot #62, Wildrose House, 3.1 acres, structurally unsound, no utilities, abandoned 30+ years, sold as is. Starting bid, £600. She hadn't even seen it in person. Just one faded photo in a grainy PDF, an eerie white cottage, half swallowed by vines, the kind of place ghosts would live. But it had landed. It had walls, and more than that, it was the only thing she could afford to fight for. Tasha would call her mad if she knew. Actually, she had. You're going to spend your last money on that death trap. Her friend had snapped over a cup of gas station tea. With Aiden's lungs, with no plan to fix it up. What if it collapses on you? Leona didn't argue. She didn't have answers. Just a whisper from her late father. She kept clutched in memory. Sometimes, kid, if you're falling anyway, fall forward. The auction moved fast. One lot. Then another. Hands raised. Numbers shouted. Property after property disappeared into the arms of investors who wouldn't ever set foot in them. Then, lot number 62, Wildrose House, on Belcroft Lane. The auctioneer's voice didn't change. The room, however, did. The crowd, lively a moment ago, fell oddly still. Even the man in the front row, with a Rolex and resting smirk, glanced up with faint amusement. The house had a reputation. Even Leona had heard it in whispers. Cursed, bad blood, untouchable. Starting bid, £600. Do I hear 650? Silence. Then, almost involuntarily, Leona's hand lifted. 600, from the lady in blue at the back. Her voice betrayed nothing. Her heart, however, thundered. Do I hear 650? A long pause. One man, mid-40s, distracted, scrolling his phone, raised a finger. 650, the auctioneer confirmed. Leona swallowed. Her hand went up again. 700. The man didn't even look up. 750. Leona's palms were damp now. She reached for calm, for logic, and found only the face of her son in her mind. 800, she said, louder this time. The man smirked and raised his hand again. 850. She closed her eyes, breathed, then raised her hand once more. 900. It was everything, her everything. The auctioneer glanced toward the man. Do I hear 950? But this time the man lowered his hand. Nah, he muttered. Too much rot for me. A breath Leona didn't realize she'd been holding escaped. Going once, the auctioneer intoned. Going twice, sold. To the lady in blue, there was no applause, no fanfare, just the creak of Leona's chair as she stood, legs unsteady. She had just bought a house, with every penny she had in the world. Not a dream home, not even a livable one, just a chance. As she approached the clerk's table, the older woman behind it raised an eyebrow. "You're a braver soul than most, Miss Harris." Leona Harris. The woman handed her a small manila folder with paperwork and a tarnished old key. "Well, Miss Harris, welcome to Wildrose House." The courthouse smelled of polished marble and old paper, like the scent of forgotten verdicts and final chances. Eleanor James, 36, pressed the envelope of cash tighter to her chest as she stepped inside. Her shoes, plain black flats with worn soles, whispered across the echoing floor, lost among the confident steps of developers in crisp suits. She wasn't here to make a business move. She was here to survive. Her name was barely audible when she called it out to register. No one paid her any mind. She looked like a woman who had wandered in by accident, but inside, Eleanor was on fire. She had exactly $900, not a dollar more, not a dollar less. The auctioneer's voice boomed like thunder through the room. Property after property passed in a blur of numbers, paddles, nods, and rising bids. Eleanor watched, quiet, still, her breath shallow. It wasn't until he said it. Next up, parcel ID 39,207. Abandoned homestead, 3.2 acres, 1084, Wildrose Lane. Starting bid, $750. Eleanor's hand moved before her brain could fully catch up. $750 from the lady in back. A few scattered glances. Then a man, mid-40s, distracted by his phone, raised his hand lazily. $800. Eleanor's fingers twitched. She lifted her hand again. $850. Another bid. $900. That was it. That was her line. "Do I hear $950? The auctioneer asked. Silence. She could walk away and keep her $900, live in her car, scrounge, plead for mercy at motels, or she could leap. "I'm offering $900, she said softly. The auctioneer frowned. "The current bid is $900, ma'am. You'd have to go higher." She looked at the man with the phone. "Would you go higher?" He didn't even look up. "Nah. Too much work for that dump. Sold to the lady in back for $900. The gavel dropped. And just like that, she owned a house. A house no one wanted. A house that held secrets the world had forgotten. As she walked out of the courthouse, clutching a single tarnished key and a stack of paperwork, Eleanor James wasn't just holding property. She was holding a storm, waiting to be awakened. The drive to Wildrose Lane felt like falling into a dream someone else had abandoned. The GPS grew quiet as Eleanor turned off the main road, swallowed by trees that whispered secrets with every breeze. Grass grew through cracks in the pavement. Vines reached for the windshield, like they were trying to hold her back. And then there it was, the house. It looked worse than the photograph. A husk, a ghost. Its once white paint had long surrendered to weather and time. The porch sagged, like it was grieving. Broken windows gaped open, like silent screams. And yet, something pulsed beneath the ruin, as if the house itself had been waiting. Eleanor parked the car. Her son, Jacob, climbed out behind her, 12 years old, and already tired of starting over. His eyes flickered from the sagging roof to the weedy yard. "We're going to live here?" he asked, barely above a whisper. Eleanor nodded. "It's ours. No landlord?" he pressed. She smiled. No landlord. They stood together, silent, as the wind rustled the tall grass. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Eleanor stepped forward, key in hand. The front door resisted her, groaning as she turned the lock. It opened with a sigh, like an old soul waking up. Inside, the house was worse than outside. The air was thick with rot and dust. Mold painted the corners. Something had nested in the fireplace. Floorboards creaked with every step, like they were protesting their own existence. But Eleanor didn't flinch. She walked through the debris like she was walking into her future, messy, broken, but hers. Jacob followed, wide-eyed. His voice was hushed. "It smells like ghosts." Eleanor laughed softly, though her chest tightened. Maybe, or maybe just stories. They explored room by room. A kitchen with rusted fixtures. A bathroom with a clawfoot tub filled with dead leaves. Upstairs, faded wallpaper peeled from the walls like old skin. A child's drawing still lingered in one corner. "This was someone's home once," Eleanor murmured. Then Jacob started coughing, deep, rasping coughs that made her stomach drop. His asthma, the mold. They raced outside. She grabbed his inhaler and helped him steady his breathing. Her heart beat in her throat. This wasn't safe, not yet, but it had to become safe. They couldn't sleep inside. That night, they slept in the car, wrapped in an emergency blanket under the watchful moon. Eleanor didn't sleep. She stared at the silhouette of the house and whispered a promise. "I don't know what you are, but I will make you livable. I will make you kind." And somewhere, beyond the cracked windows and sagging walls, something in the house listened. The next morning arrived, like a broken promise, cloudy, cold, and quiet. Eleanor and Jacob awoke stiff and sore in the car, condensation fogging the windows. She stepped outside and stretched her aching limbs, trying to shake off the weight of uncertainty. The house stood, as it had the night before, silent, sunlit now, but no less haunted by its own decay. She was brushing her teeth at the car's side mirror when a crunch of gravel turned her around. An old pickup truck ambled up the driveway. From it stepped a silver-haired woman in a pale cardigan, a basket in one hand, a guarded smile on her lips. "You must be the new owner," the woman called. "Oh, that's me. Eleanor Rhodes. I'm Bernice Harper. I live down the hill." She offered the basket. "Muffins. Made them this morning. You'll need the strength." Eleanor accepted the basket gratefully. "Thank you. That's incredibly kind." Bernice peered at the house behind her. "That place. It remembers. Don't let it fool you." Eleanor tilted her head. "Remembers?" Bernice's voice softened. "You bought the old McKinley place. Last lived in by Celine McKinley, who used to be a healer around these parts, grew herbs, and treated folks when they couldn't afford hospitals. Some say she was a miracle worker. Others say she knew too much." Jacob looked up from where he was kicking at the grass. "What happened to her?" Bernice's eyes narrowed. "She disappeared. 1988. Left everything behind. Her boots were still by the back door. And the house?" Eleanor asked. "Empty, ever since. Some folks say it's cursed." She gave Eleanor a look, part warning, part challenge. "But I say places like this don't curse you. They test you. If you're meant to be here, you'll find out soon enough." Bernice turned and walked back to her truck. But before she drove off, she added, "Look under the weeds. Celine's garden might still be there. If it is, don't waste it." That afternoon, Jacob explored the backyard, while Eleanor tried scrubbing down the kitchen walls. He returned, wide-eyed. "Mum, there's something out there. You have to see it. Through the wild thicket of grass and brambles, beyond the rusted shed, they found it. Rows upon rows of overgrown herbs and forgotten vines, wrapped in weeds but still breathing. Lavender, mint, thyme, for dozens of medicinal plants planted with care, now reclaimed by chaos." "Did Celine plant all of this?" Jacob whispered. Eleanor knelt down and touched a cluster of wild chamomile. Looks like she did. And it looks like it's still waiting. The garden was alive, just buried, and as Eleanor knelt there, dirt under her nails, she felt something she hadn't in months. Purpose. Maybe this house didn't just remember. Maybe it was inviting her to continue what Celine had started. Night fell like a curtain of ink over the old house. The garden discovery had stirred something in Eleanor, a feeling not of fear, but of responsibility. She could almost sense Celine McKinley in the silence, as though the air remembered her footsteps. That night, Eleanor sat on the front steps with Jacob wrapped in a blanket beside her, staring out over the wild property. "Do you think she's still out there?" he asked quietly. Eleanor looked at him. Who? The woman, Celine. "Do you think she left? Or do you think something happened?" Eleanor didn't answer, because deep down, she already knew. The next day, Eleanor began clearing what would be Jacob's bedroom. The dust was thick, the wallpaper curling like old leaves. She opened the cracked window to let in air, then began sweeping, uncovering a faded wooden floor. Her broom snagged on something, a warped board that lifted slightly under pressure. She paused. Carefully, she knelt and wedged her fingers under the edge. The floorboard lifted with a reluctant groan. Beneath it lay a small metal box. It was old, tarnished with time. Inside, she found a leather-bound journal, a stack of photographs wrapped in twine, and a brass key with an ornate rose pattern on the head. Her fingers trembled as she opened the journal. The first page read, in a looping, confident script, "Property of Dr. Celine McKinley, Botanical Research, 1986-1988. The entries began with garden notes and sketches, detailed observations of medicinal plants and healing compounds. But as Eleanor turned the pages, the tone shifted. Warnings, cautions, a name, R.K., a pharmaceutical representative who'd offered to partner with Celine, but Celine had refused. One passage sent chills through Eleanor's spine. They offered millions. "I said no. He told me that was a mistake. Said my research wasn't mine anymore. That once knowledge is worth something, someone will come for it. I don't trust him. I don't trust what they'll do." The final entry, written in rushed, almost panicked handwriting. "If I disappear, the truth must be buried where only someone with purpose can find it. Not just anyone. Someone like me. Someone who knows that healing isn't meant to be hoarded." Eleanor sat back on the floor, her breath catching. This wasn't just a house with a haunted history. It was a crime scene, and the key in her hand. It was about to unlock more than just a door. It was nearly midnight when Eleanor returned to the overgrown path behind the orchard. The key had been weighing heavy in her pocket all day. The rose-shaped top, the rust on its edges, it didn't feel like an ordinary key. It felt intentional, like it had waited years for the right hands. Sam had offered to come, but Eleanor declined. Not yet. Not until she knew what she was dealing with. She needed quiet. She needed to listen. And so she went alone. The moonlight slipped through the branches like silver threads as she followed a memory, or maybe just intuition, through the brush, past the stone, lined well, past the shattered greenhouse, toward a slope where the earth dipped into a half-hidden clearing. There it was, an old concrete structure, almost swallowed by vines. No windows, no markings, just a rusted steel door with a keyhole that matched her key exactly. Her fingers hovered. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves around her like a whisper. She turned the key. It slid in smoothly, clicked. The door groaned open. Inside, silence, dust, the thick, preserved smell of antiseptic and dried plants. The room was surprisingly intact. Metal shelves lined the walls, filled with jars of labeled herbs. a microscope, old notebooks, diagrams laminated behind foggy glass, and then beneath the main desk, a second compartment, another lock. She used the key again. Inside, a leather pouch containing dozens of handwritten pages and a video cassette labeled Testimony, McKinley, May 20, 1989. She stared at it, heart pounding, then unfolded the note beside it. If you found this, it means the storm came, and I didn't survive it. My name is Dr. Celine McKinley. This is everything they wanted to be buried. Eleanor drove home in silence, Jacob sleeping in the back seat. The cassette lay beside her on the passenger seat, like a living thing. She didn't have a VCR. Who did anymore? But Iris did. The old woman had grown up before digital convenience, and she never threw anything away. I'll come tomorrow, Iris had said. But Eleanor couldn't wait. That night, Eleanor sat in Iris's living room, hands folded as the screen flickered to life. The image was grainy, but there she was, Celine, tall, poised, intelligent eyes. She looked straight into the camera and said, "If you're watching this, I want you to know, I didn't run, I didn't vanish. I was erased." And what followed was more than confession. It was a declaration, names, dates, compounds, an entire formula documented by Celine proving her discovery could halt, even reverse, the effects of a rare autoimmune condition known as Dorian's syndrome. I gave up everything to protect this, because healing should not be patented, and I will not sell salvation to the highest bidder. By the end of the tape, Eleanor's hands were shaking. This wasn't just a breakthrough, it was a billion-dollar secret, and someone had killed to keep it hidden. By dawn, Eleanor knew one thing for certain. She was being watched. It wasn't paranoia anymore. The unmarked black SUV had idled near the edge of the orchard the day before. The strange man, who visited under the name Victor Lane from the so-called County Property Review Office, yet offered her $250,000 to just walk away. And now this, a voicemail from a blocked number, calm but chilling. "Miss Barrett, we strongly advise against pursuing the McKinley material any further. There are consequences, especially for single mothers living in isolated areas. Accidents happen." Eleanor replayed the message twice, not because she didn't understand, because she did. This wasn't a warning, it was a leash, and they expected her to obey. By noon, she sat across from Dr. Helena Ruiz, a former virologist who had worked with Celine McKinley decades ago. Eleanor had contacted her after finding a name scrawled in the margins of the journal. Helena's reaction to the formula pages was instant. She gasped, and then she swore. "My God, she really did it." Eleanor leaned in. "Did what?" "Cracked the stability barrier. We tried for years. Do you understand what this is?" This could eliminate autoimmune decline in late-stage Dorian patients. It's monumental. Eleanor didn't blink. Someone killed her over this. Eleanor didn't look surprised. Of course they did. The pharmaceutical industry doesn't invest in cures. They invest in treatments. Cures don't make repeat customers. Later that night, Eleanor returned to the farmhouse, only to find her mailbox ripped open. The cassette tape inside was missing. The back door was ajar. Inside, drawers had been rifled through. The journal, the formulas gone, but not all of it, because Eleanor had followed Iris's advice. Always make 3 copies, 1 digital, 1 on paper, 1 off-site. And the originals? Locked inside Sam's truck, parked far from the house. They hadn't gotten everything, but they were getting bold, and Eleanor understood what that meant. They were getting desperate. The orchard breathed like an ancient heart, quiet, steady, remembering. Eleanor stood among the wild apple trees at dawn, the fog curling around her boots like fingers from another world. And somewhere, behind the veil of branches and wind, she heard it again, a whisper, soft, deliberate. Eleanor, she froze. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't imagination. It was a woman's voice, faint, but unmistakably real. It was the same voice her son Max had mentioned hearing days before, the one from the old photographs, the one who once lived in this house. Dr. Celine McKinley. Guided by instinct more than logic, Eleanor walked deeper into the orchard. The trees grew older here, gnarled, thick, their trunks weathered like the spines of old books. One, in particular, stood at the center, ringed with moss and broken roots. At its base, a disturbed patch of soil, she dug with her bare hands, clawing through earth and roots, until her fingers hit something hard. A metal box, rusted but intact. Inside, a microcassette recorder and a faded envelope sealed with wax. She pressed play. Celine's voice crackled to life. If this reaches anyone, please, know that I tried. I didn't want to disappear. I wanted to fight, but they came for me. They took everything. They think they've won. But the truth, my life's work is buried. Not lost. Just waiting. If you found this, then maybe there's still hope. Eleanor clutched the recorder to her chest. Celine hadn't just hidden evidence. She'd left behind a map, a message, a mission. Later that night, Eleanor copied the recording and sent it to Dr. Ruiz. We need legal eyes, federal eyes. Someone with more power than me. I already made the call. Ruiz replied, they're sending someone from the Bureau, but Eleanor, be careful. If they know you have this, they already know, Eleanor said softly. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that someone was already watching from the tree line, camera in hand, radio crackling. She's found the orchard site, the voice said, into the receiver. Initiate next phase, and far away, a familiar name reappeared on a confidential call log. Victor Lane, Radcliffe Pharmaceuticals. It was a stormy afternoon when Eleanor and Dr. Ruiz played the second tape. The microcassette hissed, popped, and then cleared. You don't understand, Victor. My formula could cure them, not manage. Cure. Why bury that? Celine's voice trembled, not with fear, but fury. Then came a man's voice, cold, measured, familiar with boardrooms and headlines, because a cure ends the revenue stream, doctor. Management is forever. Cures are not. It was Victor Lane, CEO of Radcliffe Pharmaceuticals, and now, unintentionally, the villain of his own confession. Ruiz stared at the speaker, pale. This is enough to open a federal case, maybe even murder charges if we connect it to Celine's disappearance. Eleanor's hands tightened around the recorder. Then we bring it all. Everything. The journal, the audio, the well, the orchard, the lab. We don't leave any piece behind. The FBI agents arrived under aliases and plain clothes, but they didn't stay hidden for long. Once the story broke, national news picked it up, pushing Radcliffe into a spiral of denials and damage control. Eleanor became a symbol, the mother who found what corporations tried to bury, but with the fame came new danger. She received anonymous threats. Her car was tampered with again. Max's inhalers were stolen from his backpack at school. One day, she found a note on their porch. Stop, or he's next. That night, Eleanor didn't sleep. Instead, she sat in the restored lab, surrounded by the living breath of Celine's work, her notebooks, her extracts, her wisdom, and she whispered, you didn't hide this just to be forgotten, and I won't run, not now. It was then that she noticed something in the final notebook, a symbol, a crescent moon, a compass, and a series of numbers, GPS. Coordinates. Not the orchard, not the lab, somewhere deeper. The next day, Eleanor, Ruiz, and a federal agent named Harris set off into the forest beyond the property, into a place where GPS lost signal and only instinct remained. Hours later, beneath a massive oak tree, they found it, a steel lockbox, buried beneath a false root. Inside, Celine's handwritten last will and testimony, photographs of Victor Lane at the Mercer property, and the final recording, the one she'd never meant to make public, but knew someone needed to hear. If you're listening, it means they've succeeded in silencing me, but not the truth. I'm not afraid to die. I'm afraid of being forgotten, of my work being twisted, used to profit instead of heal. But I believe in you, whoever you are. I believe you'll do what I couldn't. Eleanor closed her eyes. I will, she whispered. I promise. Spring returned to the valley like a promise. The once overgrown property now brimmed with new life. The medicinal gardens, reconstructed with guidance from Celine's original sketches, blossomed under Max's careful hands. Lavender, mint, chamomile, and rare hybrids from Celine's journals had begun to bloom, not just in soil but in purpose. They named it the Mercer Grove. But Eleanor knew it wasn't just a garden, it was a resurrection. Victor Lane was arrested just 3 weeks after the FBI authenticated the final tapes and verified the hidden GPS cache. The charges: conspiracy to commit murder, suppression of life-saving medical research, corporate fraud on a global scale. As news of the scandal unfolded, Radcliffe Pharmaceuticals saw its empire begin to crumble. Whistleblowers came forward. Other silenced scientists found the courage to speak. It wasn't just justice for Celine. It was justice for every buried truth. Eleanor never saw herself as a hero. She still made Max's breakfast before school. She still worked her part-time shifts at the community clinic. But now, every time she walked past the porch where Celine once sat, every time she opened the lab doors, she felt it, that quiet strength, that legacy she had stepped into, not by blood, but by belief. With help from Dr. Ruiz and the legal team, assembled by investigative journalist Catherine Wiles, Eleanor founded the Celine Mercer Foundation, an initiative dedicated to protecting and distributing life-saving treatments developed through ethical, affordable, nature-based research. She refused a private buyout offer of $18 million. Instead, she licensed the treatment for Carver's syndrome to a non-profit pharmaceutical alliance with one condition: it must never cost more than a working family can afford. On the 1-year anniversary of the auction, the town gathered for a sunrise dedication. Max stood at the front, holding a framed portrait of Celine Mercer, eyes bright, one brown, one blue. When he spoke, his voice didn't waver. She never met me, but she saved me. And now I get to help, save others. That's what my mum calls a full circle miracle. The crowd fell silent, and then rose in a standing ovation. That night, Eleanor sat on the front porch, a steaming mug in her hands, the scent of rosemary and lavender in the breeze. Sam sat beside her, their shoulders brushing, no words needed. The stars were bright above, and from the second-story window of the house, a light flickered, not from electricity, but as if someone had walked by, watching, guarding, grateful. Eleanor didn't look away. I kept my promise, she whispered, and I'll keep going. The house was no longer haunted. It was healing, not just for her, not just for Max, but for the world that had almost forgotten what kindness, courage, and truth could grow from broken ground.